afternoon and welcome once again to this month's Self-Build Hour. I'm Jenny Chandala. I'll be host of the session today, and we are going to be focusing this session on wow design factors and how to get those incorporated into your design even if you're on a budget. So just a reminder of how the Self-Build Hour works and why it was created. It was created as a way to focus on a specific self-build topic every month with an invited expert, and to provide that as an opportunity where you can join us live and ask questions specifically of the expert, or it's recorded so that you can go back and watch it on demand at the convenience of your own home or whenever and wherever it is convenient for you. So we are really pleased today to be joined by Allan Corfield. Many of you will already be familiar with him, especially if you're already familiar with AC Architects. He is the managing director of AC Architects. He is also an expert with Home Building and Renovating magazine and shows. His passion really is working with self-builders to create a low-energy home. And those of you who are out there who are wanting to engage with an architect and wanting to create your own self-build home also know that there's a benefit to having an architect and someone with a design eye being involved in your project. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Allan. Please do use the Q&A function that's at the top of the screen in order to ask questions throughout the presentation. We will be answering those questions following Allan's presentation. You can also use the chat function if you don't have the Q&A button on your screens. So I will now hand it over, Allan.
Thanks, Jenny. I shall just do screen. Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. Thanks for having me back on. In this session, we're going to talk, as Jenny's alluded to, about wow factor design and how to get it. It's important that we understand where we need to come from and what it is that we want, being able to budget for it, support ourselves with the right team, have an understanding of the design stages, all before we really think about the big design ideas. And that's vitally important, right? We need to make sure that we can actually afford this, that we can see this project through rather than get too excited by going to shows and looking at Pinterest and looking at other people's work, right? We need to understand what it is we want to do, how we're going to do it, and how we can support ourselves to get to that point. So that's really what I'm going to focus on in the next 30 minutes of this talk, and just give you as broad an understanding as I can on the main subject. So when we start speaking to anybody before we actually get appointed with them, we try and get them to think really long and hard about what it is that they want to do, what they want to get out of this project. And it really needs to start with the project brief and understanding exactly what it is that you want. So I would urge people to have a think about what works currently in their home, what works well, what doesn't work so well. Have a think how you live, and we're talking about a building that is a home, right? So it's a lot more important than other buildings. It needs to interact with the way that you live. It can engage that, or it can be part of it, or it can drive the way that you actually live. So think about how you want to live now. Maybe in 5 years' time, once the kids leave home, 10 years' time, once the kids come back from uni, or how you get into using the home when you're into a bit of old age, when you're less able-bodied. So we want to be able to think what it is that we're doing here, so that we can see all these things. So what's good and what's bad in terms of that home that you've got. And the previous homes that you might have. It's also interesting to think about some of the big activities that you may do in and around that home. So these are examples that we've had all from previous clients and previous conversations that we've had. Number 4 is a good example of we've got a lot more younger clients now, or a lot more active clients, whether they're younger or older. So designing a home around their uses is really important. So mountain bikers, they want to be able to take the bikes off the garage, onto the bike, onto the car, go off and do what they're going to do, come back, drive into the garage, take the bikes, hose them down, put them back up onto their shelves, but then go into the house via a utility room that's got the washer dryer in it, but it's also maybe got access to a wet shower room. So they can all get showered off, everything can be closed, put back where it's going to go, then go into the house. So think about some of the activities that you do in and around the house that could then help drive that design. The brief is effectively what we're talking about. It's a document that we want to be creating before we start speaking to architects, to designers, to the project team. It's something that you want to do with everybody in the family. It's an evolving document, so a lot of people make the mistake of writing out what they want at the start, but then they don't go back and re-envisage it or review it once things change, maybe budgets or requirements or planning conditions. So let's pull back and have a think, well, what did we actually start this out for? And what did we want to do in the first place with this? On that brief, there's lots of different things that we would expect to see. So anything from basic room information and room sizes. One thing that we're not as architects is we're not mind readers. Everything is in your head or collective group of family heads where you want to understand. We need to understand what it is that you want to do. So all that information needs to go down on paper. Do you want to live in an open plan space, or do you want to be able to have lots of different rooms that are multi-purpose? Do you like contemporary design? Do you like more traditional design? There'll usually be a reason if you've bought the site, there'll be a view or a vista or something that you want to really encapsulate in the design. Energy performance and also sustainability are really important. And the two things are different. We can have a really well-built, well-insulated, energy-efficient home, but it'd be built out of really unsustainable materials. So it's important for you to understand where you sit in that. Do you want low energy bills? Do you want to save the planet? Do you want to do both? Because that will drive the design of the home, the budget, the things that you're going to build out with as well. And I would urge anybody that's doing a small extension to use some of that budget to improve the fabric of that existing building. Right? Don't just put it all this better performing thing on the side of the house and expect it all to work well together. It's just going to draw the heat out from it. Your role as a self-builder is vitally important, and it massively impacts what you're going to do, but also will drive the budget. So if you've got a limited budget and you're planning to do it as a self-builder where you're managing individual trades, we design a house to that, but then halfway through the project you decide, well, actually I can't put enough time into self-manage it. That budget might have gone up for exactly the same house by 20%. So we really need to understand what we're doing, how we're going to be involved, and where we can go from that. Budget is a massive thing. A lot of architects get criticised for designing things that are too expensive. I usually push back and say, well, did you know how much you had in the first place? Had you spoken to Build Store or looked at your finance options? Did you know where the money was coming from as well? So that massively impacts cash flow. So budget is vitally important that we understand that before we start anything. Timescales as well. Don't just pick Christmas Day as a moving in date, because you'll just end up ruining Christmas. The what and the how are easy. We know that. We know what we're doing, how we're going to do it. Your why is specific to you. So you might be a self-builder who's got a young family and want to create something that's exciting and energy efficient and that will inspire your kids. So that's slightly different to when we're working with a developer who wants to do something at speed, at pace, to be able to move it on. So your why is really important to you. We always expect to get information from clients, sketches. You can download Google SketchUp and have a bit of fun. So again, this is a really good tool for existing buildings. You can measure it, you can design it out, and then look at what the implications are going to be. I'm a big fan of Lego. Anybody that knows me knows around our office, we've got lots of Lego. I arrived at a project down on the south coast and was handed this plastic Lego building. And they said they wanted it slightly bigger and less plasticky. So they've got it now. But it's all about using tools to be able to understand what it is that you want. Pinterest is a massive tool. It's just an online scrapbook, but the benefit is that you can create boards that you can then share with your individuals and with your design team, and understand, get an idea into your head what it is that you like. And it's great for inspiration, but also sharing that. Please, husband and wife, partners, do this together. It's really important that it's one consensus of what it is that we're designing to. So we've done a lot of work on what it is that we want. It's vitally important, more so now because budgets are squeezed and cost of everything is more expensive, that we don't make mistakes that are going to cost us or waste us money. And we see this all the time when we take over projects where they might have gone with somebody cheaper to do the initial design, and we come in for building regs as a modern methods construction specialist. Or when I'm getting to do Ask the Expert for Home Building Renovate magazine, I get to see lots of people's drawings, and I see mistakes that are adding cost but not adding any value. So one example of that is floor to ceiling heights. If you've not specifically asked your architect to have a higher floor to ceiling height, and you see on your cross section that it says 248 for argument's sake, 2.4 meters with 80 millimeters on top, that 80 millimeters is coming from another piece of plasterboard, because surprise, surprise, standard materials are 2.4 high, and that's our standard floor to ceiling height. So if you've not asked for that, that's 80 millimeters of plasterboard all the way around the building that's getting added in. That's just wasted money that you'll never see the value of. The image on the screen is one of our clients' houses in Gleneagles. It's a lovely home. He wanted to have a fully timber clad building, and he wanted to have a play between the vertical and the horizontal. Now, our client was fully aware that the adding on the vertical timber is more expensive than the horizontal, because at the back of the horizontal there's vertical battens that fit it. On the vertical timber there's vertical battens and then horizontal battens, so there was twice as much timber to support the vertical element, which came in at about £5,000 on that element comparatively. So that could be an ensuite cost, or it could be your utility room cost, or it could be a kitchen. So if you don't know these things, people are letting themselves into areas where they're just not going to be able to afford those wow features that they want to do. So be mindful of all the decisions that you're making at the very outset with your designers, with your engineers, that they cost money. Everything costs money in the project. So we need to support ourselves once we've thought about the things that we want to do. We've thought about how we can do them as clever as possible. We want to support ourselves with the best team that we have. Now, I'm a chartered architect. We appoint architects, technicians, technologists, passive house experts, engineers, everything in between. To me, it's not about the title. It's about the skill set, the level of experience, and what they bring to your project. So I'll use the word architect, but it's the same as architectural designers. I'll talk a little bit about finding the right people, but you're going to need a whole list of people to support you. Big thing on here, architects don't cost buildings, quantity surveyors do. So we will design to a budget, but it's down to quantity surveyor to have a look at that and check that you can actually afford it. Okay. Lots of different consultants you need. You will need an architect or a designer. You will need a structural engineer. They're the basic level to get you through things. Under CDM 2015, Construction Design Management Act, and for the HSE guidance, you must have a principal designer working for you and a principal contractor. So it's something that's non-negotiable. So you must do this. And if an architect's speaking to you and they're not mentioning this from the outset, they've failed you already. So please make sure that if you take one thing away from this talk, that you administer your CDM 2015 client responsibilities. So when we are actually engaging with companies to get quotes, please make sure that you get fixed costs, not percentages of construction costs. That's the old way of doing things. Everybody should be able to estimate how much your project's going to take. We've done over 550 projects now. We're very data driven. We know how long it's going to take for our projects. When you're speaking to people, get references, get testimonials, go and see their projects, go and ask. Let's go and see the work that's finished, but also the work that's on site. Understand where the problems have been, how they fixed them. And don't be anybody's guinea pig. If you're wanting to do something low energy, passive house, you're a self-builder, speak to companies that do that. You're a different type of client with a different set of requirements. So to say, don't be anybody's guinea pig for a project. So just a quick run through of the design stages that you must do, just in case you're watching this and you've never seen or never worked with an architect before. There's the RIBA plan of works that a lot of architects will work with. We've got a far more simplified process that still falls in line with the RIBA stages. But we have 4 main stages that we follow. Initial design, we work on 2 different design options. We design the function of a building first, then we elevate it to become a volume, and then we dress it as an aesthetic. So it's an iterative process that you're heavily involved with. It starts as hand sketches, and then it becomes a 3D model, and we now use virtual reality to show all of our clients their buildings in full virtual reality, which is if you're not used to looking at 2D drawings in your day job, you're really going to struggle to understand volume and some of the nice things that we'll talk about later on in this. Planning application, you shouldn't be going into a planning application not knowing what the outcome is going to be. We all know the planning guidelines are there. Yes, we don't give out the approval, but we should know, and we should be guiding the planners on how they can approve your house or your extension. Don't let your neighbours find out that you're submitting a planning application by them getting an email or an advert in the paper. Have the decency to go and tell them, take your drawings, take wine, take chocolate, whatever it's going to be, to show them what it is that you're going to do. Building regs is another compliance exercise where your architecture engineers, all your main decisions are made. It's a very labour-intensive process. The energy efficiency, all these different things come into it. We're finalising our construction method, and it's the final bit of approval that you need to be able to actually then go out and build something. If you're doing a small extension, you can stop at that point. If it's a more detailed house like it's on the screen, or some of the other options, you'll need a full set of production drawings, which shows exactly how you're going to build this house, deliver these wow features. And if you don't have this information, it will all fall back on you to be making the decisions or appointing or advising the trades on site. So it's vitally important that we do this. Do not wait till you get to stage 3 or stage 4 to find out that you can't afford this. So get cost checks all the way through. It might be a quantity surveyor, it might be a local builder, it might be kit companies, and you might be managing it. But please make sure that you're understanding the cost drivers all the way through the project, so that you've got an opportunity to make changes all the way through this. If you don't want to go through that lengthy process and you just want to pick an off-the-shelf design, we have our pre-loved offering that's on our website, where you can pick from 9 previously designed homes, previously loved homes that never made it onto off the drawing board and onto the sites at much lower cost and much quicker. So there are different options there if you're not wanting to go for the full design, architectural design process. So looking at some design ideas that hopefully inspire you, and I'm mindful that this is a self-build audience, so you'll have champagne ideas and lemonade budgets, so I'll try and pare it back as much as I can throughout the process to say, well, these are the big ideas. We can do it much cheaper by doing these different things. Most of them will involve you doing more as a self-builder, but it's a balance that you have to play with. Do I want that feature, or am I willing to put a bit more effort in? So glazing, so we're all used to going to big commercial shopping centres or commercial buildings with full curtain wall glazing. What we're talking about and what we're trying to do when we're doing one-off homes is use standard products that are stacked on top of each other to create lovely glazed gables, bringing the outside and in. Timber aluminium or timber windows in general can only span so far or so high because of the limitations of the material. When we're trying to create big glass facades, we can also look at aluminium. Sight lines can become smaller, we can get taller profiles, and we can do a little bit more and create sort of moving glazed elevations. This house has got lots of different products in it, so we've picked the best product rather than going to one company and saying we'll take all of your products, right? Because that might not be the best thing for this. So we've matched the color profiles, we've matched the size of the profiles, both internally and externally, to pull different products from different companies to get the best for that opportunity. So we can also move the windows out of the elevation. We love creating layers in architecture. So these are standard windows that have been moved further out of the building to create a different play and different forms in terms of what it is that we're going to be doing. When you're picking oak, it's an expensive way to build because you've got the structure and the encapsulation. They're both mostly structural elements. So there's a bit of doubling up in the cost there. But one of the cost-effective elements, or the only real cost-effective element of it, is that you can directly glaze the windows onto the oak frame. I used to be quite controversial about my thoughts on bifold doors. I'm slightly less now. We do passive house. The tiniest little gap of air makes a big difference to us. So traditionally, we've not used bifold doors. We also have this idea of opening up buildings, and then we put loads of stuff in the way. So yes, it's nice 10% of the year to have the whole thing open, but the vast majority of the time you've got lots of stuff in the way. You've got a bad glass to frame ratio. So my preference is always fixed sliders, or sliders and fixed units. Bigger glass to frame ratio, so the majority of the time you see through something that's glass rather than lots of units of stuff. As and when you want to have opening, you've still got big openings. So, but again, this is your house, your home, your project. You do what you want to do. Our friends at Glassworks took me out to see Solarlux product a couple of years ago, and they've got a certified passive house bifold. So that's when my opinions changed slightly. Make sure if you're going to do bifold, you really think about where the units slide into, and make sure you've got one unit that can open all of the time, that it's just a normal unit rather than having to slide the bifolds, because it's just not what you want to do. Getting back with aluminium, you can have lovely corner units that slide in together. We're starting to get more expensive than timber aluminium. This is the easiest way to blow most of your budget very, very quickly. These are sort of 3-story high sliders, and sorry, each one is a metric ton. So there's about £70,000 worth of glazing in one elevation. So if you're wanting to do something like that, we will happily help you. On a more modest budget, this home will feature quite a bit in this talk in terms of pulling things back into showing how you can do a real life feature. So that's one big opening that you see made out of SIPs, and these are Rationale timber aluminium windows stacked on top of each other, with tiny little pieces of steel called flitch plates that hold the windows together. Team that up with roof lights, nice double height volume. You've got really lovely space. I mentioned about the production pack, and this is where it comes into its own, where you've got something like a glazed gable. It's very difficult to make those angled pieces of glazing fit if they're the wrong size. So the architect and engineer and kit company and window and door company work hand in hand, led by the architectural team, to make sure that each one of those individual units fits, so that we can order it off plan. It can be delivered the day after the kit goes up, and you've got wind and watertight and accurate very, very quickly. So it's a lovely home, lovely master bedroom. We've got one post that's supporting the roof that's just covered in plasterboard, and it just gives a lovely, stunning sort of wow feature. Apologies to anybody who's got a bungalow, but we're going to talk about stairs. What we try and do as a practice is create stairs and create it as part of an area and another area that we can use as a home. So this house has had a piano in it, a writing desk, a home office, a dining table, and a sort of work from home and kids space. So it's a multi-purpose space. If you're looking at traditional homes, make sure that you've got all of the proportions right, and materiality, to make sure it's not a pastiche copy. But this is actually done out of MDF, painted MDF, so very, very cost effective. But the time's been taken to look at the proportions. When we start doing contemporary, we take away things, it becomes more expensive, and it's just something you're going to a more specialist company at this point to be able to pull together all of these elements. This, you may like this, you may not like this. It's kind of irrelevant because it's not your home. But this exemplifies self-build to me. So this is one of our homes. There is a golf course and then a beach. The kids went onto the beach, the parents picked up the stones that get washed up and the glass that gets washed up. It went to Korea concrete. It was ground up and put in the concrete for the stairs. So as the kids go up and down the stairs, they see a little bit of the things that they've collected off the beach. So that's a lovely thing to be able to see. The client wanted an ornamental balustrade, couldn't afford it, so he went on a course and learned how to do it. So he now does that. So again, this is self-build, right? This is what we do when we try to create something or get something that we maybe can't afford, but we can also put in more personal stuff. Stairs can be works of art. There's definitely no kids living in this home. This is one of my favorite images actually in this talk, and it's not one of our homes. But it's just really simple. This is where good design, good architecture comes in and pays for itself. So we've got a staircase with a light well at the back, a courtyard with a tree in it, roof lights, and really big picture frame windows at the back. So as the sun comes in, it catches the reflection of the trees. The light changes during all the stages and different seasons. So you get different feelings, different colors. To me, that is good design. That's where it pays, and our good architect will pay for themselves. It's nice to be able to come into a project and see right the way through. Big picture frame window, structure spanning one side to the other. So very, very simple. Couple of pieces of timber for each tread. Again, very simple, very cost effective to do. One of our recently finished projects. So again, the client has gone for more of an industrial look, so that the black metal has been kept very, very simple, very minimalistic, with some lighting added in. So really nice features there. When you're thinking about materiality, don't go overboard. Don't try and have more than 2 or 3 different colours or different materials. It just starts to become a little bit too intense. I need to find a picture, get a picture of this project that's got the books in it. So this staircase is wider than it appears on the images. It's about 1.5 meters wide. So, and this cabinetry is full of books. So the kids can go and take books, sit and read. It's all colourful because of the spines of the books. A space has been created in between that functional space of going up and down the stairs. So really good thought process, really good design once again. You can have, we're used to having storage at the back of staircases. This is storage at the bottom. So these are just kitchen drawer units. Put the kids' shoes in there. You sit on a tread and take the shoes out and put the shoes on. Really good idea and really good use of space. Looking at how we can do something on a bit more of a budget, client wanted to have a floating staircase but wasn't willing to spend, I think, £8,000 or £9,000 at that point, so probably £20,000 now. But he still wanted the stair. So it's architecturally and structurally, we all worked together to create a proposal that meant that he could still have it. So we've got steel stringers hidden in the wall. There's steel feet that come out that are connected to that, and that just went to a local steel company. They were just fabricating something. They didn't care that it was a specialist staircase. The timber treads for the slide over them came from a timber flooring company, and the glass came from a glass company in Kerry Glass in Ireland. And templates were sent out to them, MDF templates. Glass came back, and the holes are just put in. The bolts were off-the-shelf bolts. So all of that was done on about half the price of what he was quoted. But the client took the risk. The client became the specialist stair contractor at that point. So if you want a feature and you're willing to put the effort in, you can still get it. You can also have fun, right? Let's remember we can still have fun in our buildings. I'm not sure how either of these comply with building regs, but we'll leave that one for now. As I say, think about how you can make your buildings more joyful, more inspiring, and have fun. Moving on, we don't live in floor space. We don't live in a 2D world. We live in volume. So as architects, we like to play about with volume. We like to have different height spaces dependent on the use of that space. So we've got a more utilitarian kitchen. We've got a lower floor, or lower ceiling. We then open up into the more joyful, entertaining space that's got a double height vaulted space. It's important that we pick the right construction method. So whether it's timber frame, SIPs, CLT, whatever it's going to be, that's something that's got the structure and the insulation in one plane, because that would look very different if we had very messy trusses or rafters in there. Imagine your kids having a lovely bedroom like this, being able to have a double height volume. The other bedroom has got a mezzanine level for bunk beds and play areas, so we can think about being a little bit more inspiring and interesting when we create volume and we create a space that's going to be more interesting. It's lovely to be able to welcome people into double height spaces. We like staircases. Entrance spaces in the UK are tiny little boxes. Think about opening that up and thinking about opening it up both in terms of size but also the volume. Story and a half or room in the roof in Scotland and in England is relatively easy to get through planning because it looks more like a single story space, but we've got that vaulted element. We do a lot of work with SIPs, structurally insulated panels, so we can play about with the roof pitch, the volumes, use glulam timber beams to create features and create lovely little spaces underneath the roof. Again, if you've made that choice to have oak, you want to see what you're paying for. You want to be able to touch and feel the queen or the king oak posts and really look at them and expose them. The client that had the lovely stair and the big double height space spends about 70–80% of his time on that sofa. It's got a 300 square metre home, 2 wings that are joined by this double height atrium. So he welcomes people into the double height space. when you have a more private or intimate conversation, you do that under the bridge or under the walkways, because it changes the way you interact because of the volume. But as I say, he spends a huge amount of his time sitting on that sofa, looking out and enjoying a glass of red wine. We've all spent so much more time in our homes than we did pre-COVID. Most of our clients and our staff actually work hybrid, so they've got nice work from home spaces. You might have a space under the staircase that you can actually decorate out and shut it off to be able to have that separation between work and home. You might have an Edwardian or Georgian property that's got a nice space at the top of the stairs that you could turn into a home office, external play space, whatever it's going to be. Just think about getting off that dining room table. Think about the use of the spaces that we have and make them more formal. One thing that people do is they love the idea of open plan, and then the reality of kids and stuff and the way that we use and operate buildings differently now. This clever use is there's a kids' bedroom with a central space, and they've used internal bifold doors to be able to separate the two rooms. When they're friends and they're happy and they're playing together during the day, it's one big open plan space. When they're not friends, or in the evening when they both go to bed, the two sets of sliding doors, bifold doors, go across, and there's a working from home space. So think about how you use, and you can separate and partition off buildings by using simple things like internal bifold doors. This picture here is just to sort of say, well, let's take it a stage further. If we're going to have a double use space, make sure that the internal bifold doors slide away into a recessed part of the wall. So we've done this on this new home down near Birmingham, and it slides away so it's flush with the wall. So as you see it here in this image, it's neither one thing nor the other. Those concertina effect is separating the two elements. So let's make sure we can slide it away and we can use both the spaces as they've been designed and intended. I love corner windows. Window seats, two really good tools, little things that we can add into our buildings. The image on the right-hand side of the screen is has been added on to the outside of an existing building. It is glass-to-glass connection there, so there's a lot of money going on. It's lots of hidden steel there, but we can make that more cost-effective by having windows that butt up against each other with an integral post. On the left-hand side, they've extended the kitchen units, created a big picture frame window and framed it with timber to create a window seat. So two opportunities to create spaces that might not have been there, that are just interesting and exciting. That the bit in the bedroom might have been a little chair there with some cushions on it, and you dump your clothes there. It's not actually doing anything. This is creating spaces that you could be inside and out. You could be able to sit there and have a cup of tea or a drink. It's just a nice space that might not have been there in the first place. I use baths as another example of trying to think that, why am I designing this home? What are the uses? Again, taking it back to what am I going to be doing in this building? So there's usually one person in the family who spends an exorbitant amount of time in a bath and wants to do that. So design the house, the space around that. It helps if you live in the Alps and you've got no body conscious issues. The client that spent a significant amount of his time in that chair overlooking the atrium drinking his red wine spends a lot of his time in this bath. So there was a good bit of design work to be done to make sure we picked the bath, we centered the window sill height was the right height that he could put his glass of wine on. The top of the window was the perfect height so that he could see just enough of the hills, but the people passing by in cars on the ground floor next to him weren't going to be put off by him trying to get in and out of the bath. So there was a good bit of design work went into specifically creating that feature and delivering that feature from paper, from his ideas, to actually the practicality of getting that built on site. We've also got a lot more stuff, display stuff in homes. So we create niches and we create recesses. The reason I use this image as an example is that they've taken the time to think about the size of the tile. So the recess and the niche is exactly the same size as that. So there's not awkward cuts. It looks crisp and it looks clean. So it's a good way of displaying candles or whatever it's going to be in that room. So just take a little bit more time when you're creating design features to think, pare it back and think about the process and everything that's going to be involved to help deliver that as successfully as possible. You can also go a step further. So the image on the right is one of our clients knew exactly what product she wanted to have. So you've got that sort of awkward shaped thing below the niche below the mirror, and that now has a really tall product in it, and then a series of smaller products. So you can go to the nth degree and really dial down on what it is that you're going to do and what you're going to show in spaces. If you're going to be putting a recess or a niche in a wet area, make sure it's tanked properly. Think about the products that are going to be in there. So time's been taken to think, well, I'm going to have a towel. How long is the towel? What depth is it? When it's all rolled up. Seems simple, but it's that way of taking things that stage further. Maybe think about the light from above. You could have glass shelves to be able to get the light right the way through, and also think that those spaces come from somewhere else. So if you're putting it into a wall that's neighbouring another room, just make sure that you're allowing for that, so that recess or that niche doesn't then come away from another bedroom or something like that. So just really think about it up front. Shadow gaps, just finishing on a couple of little opportunities for creating interior design options. We're talking about this little gap at the bottom where the skirting board normally is. This is fine in a commercial setting. In a more residential property, it's far more hard wearing. We've got kids scuffing things, we hoover things. So it's better to raise the shadow gap further up the wall. So we do this on lots of projects. MDF flat skirting board at the bottom, and then the shadow gap comes further up the wall. So a real way of still getting the practicality and the more hard wearing, because you've got an MDF strong, cost-effective thing that's on the base, but you've still got that nice, crisp, clinical detail further up. Again, this might not be for everybody, but it's a nice opportunity to create something more contemporary. You can continue upstairs into window reveals. If you're not into messy or traditional architraves around everything, you could go more crisp and contemporary and continue that shadow gap around the window. So in this, the reveals have just been dealt with by a solid piece of timber. The door closes into that, and it looks like it's one solid flush piece of design. So nice idea. That's how it's created an f-stop. So at the top, the plasterboard goes into it, and you skim over the little lip, and at the bottom you add in your skirting board, and then the channel that you see creates that shadow gap. So really nice opportunity to create a crisp detail. The f-stop is going to cost similar to the normal profile that you're going to have, but there is more labour involved in creating a feature like this. So lighting features, this is one of my own projects. We didn't want to, or I didn't want to spend a lot of money on expensive inbuilt mirrors with storage facilities or lighting integrated. So with the joiners on site, we again, similar to the stairs, we pared everything back. So we've got marine ply that's fixed further off the wall so that we can create storage around it. The mirrored glass that came from the glass company is about 20 millimeters bigger all the way around than the ply that it fits onto, and we've got an LED strip that sits all the way around that. You can take it a step further, and we've seen it now where we can put underfloor heating mats in between the mirror and the ply, connect that to humidity stat. As soon as the humidity builds up in the shower, enough heat comes on the mirror just to make it a anti-mist condensation mirror. So clever little features that you can add in that come in at a fraction of the price because you've paired the items up rather than going to the big expensive wholesale costs. Another thing that we do is use LED lights at the bottom of vanity units and team that up with a PIR sensor. So as soon as we open the door, enough light comes on in all of the bathrooms to just guide you on your way. And it's just a nice little feature. It's practical. We also have similar in utility rooms. So open the door with the boys and the shopping in hand. Open the door, PIR sensor clicks on and puts the lights on. That's clever. That's practical. Wow. That's not reaching in your pocket and opening up an app to do something, or shouting at a automation system in the house that doesn't understand you and doesn't do what you want to do. It's really simple, cost effective, and adds actual value into your daily life. I often get asked, well, what's the sort of most cost effective improvement that I can do to add value? I always go directly to adding more daylight into a property. It might be roof lights, or it might be on a tighter budget or a more focused area. So you might use something like a sun pipe or from solar tube. This is really helpful when people put on rear extensions onto properties. A lot of people make the mistake of just putting that on and then being surprised that all of the rooms that they've now blocked off the sunlight from are dark. So these previously were on the outside of the house, but they're now in the centre of the building. And often people will still have dining rooms, living rooms, kitchens in that heart of the home that's actually now got no daylight. So if you can use a sun pipe from the roof, take it from the second story, hide it between some walls or some cupboards, and get that down into the centre of the building, you can add lots of natural daylight for not a lot of money. So as I say, think about adding, how can we improve the daylight, the space, the quality of the spaces in our homes? If you're just starting out and you've got limited budget, maybe it's your first project, first home, and you spent all your money on your mortgage and borrowings and everything else, go room by room, change the paint. Maybe if it's your kitchen, you could be either painting the worktops, or painting the units, changing your worktops, changing your handles. All of these things can be done far more cost effective than you think. Buster and Punch and Dowsing and Reynolds are two really good companies that will sell you individual handles, individual switches, that you can go around each room and just improving things bit by bit. Spend a couple £100 in each room, and you're just adding that bit of wow, making it your own, putting your own stand on it, and just work your way around. Don't go crazy, and you can just add, as I say, add that little bit of wow and make it that bit more special room by room. So just to summarise before we hand back over to Jenny, use that Pinterest board for your features. Remember, share that with your team, and be the best self-builder that you can be. There's good architects and bad architects, but there's also good and bad clients. So by listening to Self Builder, by coming to the shows, by purchasing magazines, going on courses, coming to our seminars, all these different things, you're becoming better educated and a better client in the first place. So try and integrate these features as early as you can in the project. I know a lot of you will be watching this live or on repeat and thinking, oh, I want to add that in now. That's fine, but just take a step back and just speak to your architect, your designers, your project team to make sure that there's no repercussions for adding something in at a later date in your project. And we've given examples in here of how you can get those big features, but not have to pay as much for them. But all of those things only happen with the right design team around you and you taking some of the risk. Right? By not going to a specialist and pulling it all apart, you become the specialist, you become the project manager. So make sure if you're doing that you're fully aware of the risk to get that reward. And remember that wow can come from something that's practical. It doesn't have to be a big glazed gable. It could be that light coming on and guiding your way. So I hope you found that interesting. I hope it's spurred you on. It's given you a bit of inspiration into what it is that you want to do with your project. I'll hand us all back to Jenny now.
Thank you very much, Alan. There were a lot of inspiring pictures in that. And I think a lot of ideas for everyone. It's always, actually, I enjoy watching you give that presentation because it reminds me of why we do what we do, and actually the working as a collaborative effort with the self-build clients. Sometimes self-build clients bring things to us that we've never done before, we've not thought about doing, and it is a really fun and interesting challenge to incorporate it into the project. So self-build design at its best is a team effort. So I'm wondering, for people who are seeing those and have written down every single thing on your list as something that they want to incorporate into their design, should they be thinking about how to prioritize some of these things? And is every feature appropriate for everybody?
Well, I think it's important, as we discussed with the brief, it's important to write down what is important, what are our must-haves, what are our desirables, because budget constrains most things for most people, probably more so than planning. But you've got quite a few different constraints that will come into your project. So some of these things you might want, but you just can't have because you just can't afford them, or the planners won't let you in your area, or that big glazed gable might be overlooking a neighbour. So I think it's about one, having that wish list and understanding what are non-negotiables, and then designing something that's bespoke for you, for your site, for your budget. And I think that way it'll naturally drive certain things out that maybe just aren't for you. But I think it is about prioritizing, really, and that comes down, as we know, Jenny, to the individual, and it's certain people. And I think it's being aware that, right, I'm going to have that glazed gable, but it's going to cost me £10,000, and being okay with spending that amount of money. It's when people go into things not fully aware that it becomes you're backtracking and you're value engineering backwards to get something that maybe's lost the joy and the wow that they went into it in the first place. So they're left with this shell that we can't unsee things. We all know that. You can't unsee the cheapest price. You can't unsee something that you really, really want. So I think we try always to give different varying options of, this is what you can afford, this is what you might be able to afford. And I think you're right. It comes down to prioritizing, and that's on the individual, not on us.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I know I have conversations with a lot is just, it's so easy to lose sight of why you started the project, because you get lost in this rabbit hole of Pinterest boards and online forums and everything else, and going to the HBR shows and the SBRC shows that you can sort of get carried away. So to really remember why you're doing it and what is the most important thing, and always come back to that.
Yeah, and most people go on start this journey because there's not out there isn't the house that they want doesn't exist. And that's the national house builders have got certain house types, and that's what the vast majority of self-builders polled say, well, I'm doing this for choice, I'm there to be part of the design, and that's what a bespoke home gives you. And it is important of just of sticking with what it is that why you started this out in the first place, and making sure you get that, or the majority of that. And it's a challenge. The whole thing is a challenge, and that's, I think, what we've been trying to say throughout the self-build hours, that this isn't easy. It's not for everybody, but if you're as educated as you can be and as well informed and well armed, then it's completely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question that has come in about sun pipes, solar tubes. I've heard they get dirty, and the dirt is then shown where the light shines through the room. Is there any way to go about guarding against that?
I think that most of them now have coatings that with UV and with rain, they should dissolve most of the things that go on there. But it's probably similar to a roof light on a roof anyway. You would want to try and see, well, how can I safely clean that? Whether it's spraying, or whether it's being able to get up with a long reach pole, or being able to, I suppose with a roof light, you've got the opportunity to flip it round internally and clean it from the internal. You don't have that with the sun pipe, so it's a completely valid thing to think of. But even with solar panels, there's an expectation that you're going to have somebody at some point will have to get up and clean it, or you're going to lose efficiency. So it's a similar thing, and I think it's something that the principal designer would need to take into account from a CDM point of view as well, as well, how do I maintain that? Because the last thing you want is a feature, whether it's a roof light or a sun pipe, that's dirty, that's not giving you the full benefit of that feature. So I think, yes, it can be an issue, but there are coatings out there that make a big difference now, that will degrade stuff and wash it off. But from that point on, I would be saying, well, how do we get up there at once a year? Or when we're maintaining our roof, or we're maintaining our PV panels, or maintaining our roof lights, that at the same time it's cleaned safely.
There seems to be a lot about daylight after your comment about that. And it says, this question is about how far out you can really go on a single story extension before you start to severely impact the light within the room.
I think the easiest thing on that, Jenny, is just if people are, and I see this when I do Ask the Expert for a magazine, and I'll do that this weekend. People sit in front of me with designs by others, and I'll go, well, great, you've added this extension on, you've got all this space that was there that now has no daylight, and you're still putting your kitchen, your heart of your home in it, or your dining room. It's going to be, you're going to have a lighting feature in there. So the easiest thing to do at the moment is to sit and look at that room at the moment on the height of summer or the height of winter, or whatever it's going to be, and just see how far do the shadows, or how far does the light penetrate back into that room, because that's then bespoke and specific to you. And if you think, well, it penetrates 2.5 meters in clearly, so the chances are it's going to be very similar when you extend out further from that new building, from that new building line. There's calculations that your architect can do, and it really depends on the face, what elevation you're facing. And obviously we've got to think about overheating now in our buildings, from Part O and the Section 6 of the regs. So we need to understand these things. So we need to understand from how much sunlight's coming in, but also, are we bringing too much in from an overheating point of view? So, but I would use the elevation in the windows that you've got at the moment as a guide. But your architect should be able to show you that. We've got the benefit of sitting our clients in the new room in VR and then seeing exactly how far the sun comes in. So not every company has that benefit, but it is an issue, and we need to make sure it doesn't penetrate in as far as you think it's going to.
Absolutely, and there's so many variables in terms of what are the new windows going to be like, what's the vegetation like outside, is there a fence nearby, what time of the year is it?
Yeah, and if it's the west elevation, you've got that. It's tricky to deal with all throughout the year because of the way the sun moves. So everything's specific to your site and to the orientation of that. So, but it's more important that you're aware that it could be an issue than giving a definitive response, other than being specifically involved in the project to give you the tools to understand visually, is there going to be an issue or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You talked a bit about, well, we've talked a lot about sort of selecting professional teams to be around you, and you've talked about putting together a brief. But what should people be looking for in terms of when they're interviewing professionals? Should they be interviewing professionals? What does that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. Whoever any discipline that you're appointing, they all have to be part of your team, and there has to be good communication. So you have to be able to build a rapport with them. You're going to be our average time on a project is about 9 months from appointment to getting on site, and then maybe another further 9 months to 2 years, depending on how they're building it. So we're part of your team and your family, and we need to be, so that connection is really important. First and foremost, the company that you're interviewing, they have to have done a load of those types of projects. I think I see so many people that, and we come up against it. We're not the cheapest by far, but we come up against it where we're coming up against a one-man band who's got no experience in that, and it's like, well, we've done 500 of these, and we've got lots of experts around that help your project all the way through. So I think it's understanding the type of company that you're working with. Can they actually fulfill your requirements at pace, in time, and be responsive enough? Is it the right price? Is it actually good value? So I think it's one thing being expensive, but if you're expensive and you don't actually add value, that's a different thing. We're fortunate that we've got our offering of architecture, engineering, passive house all under one roof, so we can fulfill lots of different roles with a client. But I think it's there shouldn't be a bad buying decision these days. There's enough information out there. There's enough time to spend with people to understand if you want to work with them. What are the services? Are they tailored to suit you, to get you through all those key points? And there's lots of architects out there that this is a bugbear of mine personally, that do pretty pictures and don't see projects right the way through. So they have no understanding of the pain point of clients when they start on site, or when they go to get costs and things are wildly expensive because there's inefficiencies or there are mistakes made. So just make sure you're working, I think I said this in the talk, don't be anybody's guinea pig. So make sure you're working with people that do this type of work, they see it all the way through, and that you've got a good connection with them.
Well, thank you very much. I think we've gotten through our questions, and I'm conscious of time, so we will go ahead and close. But that was a really inspiring presentation, so thank you very much for that. I will just close then with the top tips that I wrote down as we were going through. So top takeaways for me was that the project starts with your brief, that you should align efficiencies and reality with your design choices. So back to that comment we were having, the conversation we were having about you can't have everything on the list necessarily, and you probably wouldn't want to have everything on the list. Really be aware of your options when selecting your professionals, and do it with care. Use your personality and creativity to your advantage in the design process. Where you can, simplify your palette, and let the architecture do the work, the design do the work. Consider the volume, not just the layout. And finally, just incorporate flexibility into your space. So that closes this session of the Self-Build Hour. We do always have a lot of online and in-person offerings. There are more in-person offerings coming up by the way of 2 upcoming home building shows. So the HBR show coming up in Glasgow, that's this weekend, 10th and 11th of May. And then the following weekend, the NSBRC, the National Self-Build and Renovation Center, will be having their spring show, which is the Festival of Sustainable Homes, and that's in Swindon at the center, the 16th and 17th of May. And next month, you can join us again. We will be joined by James Spohr, who's here to talk about lighting design within your self-build project. So we look forward to seeing you next month. That's Thursday, the 12th of June at 1 o'clock, and more information will come out about that. Thank you very much for your time and attention today, and we look forward to seeing you next month.